Welcome, everyone who's just joining us. You are in the right spot if you came here to see Powering Up NewsMatch with Community Matches. During this breakout session, we will explore the best practices for obtaining community matches to bolster year-end and individual giving, and we'll hear from INN members who will share their experiences and expertise in this topic specifically. My name is Jeffrey Woolverton. I am the Chief Development Officer for the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, or ICIJ, formerly actually part of the INN team. So it's a pleasure to be part of the INN Days conference in this capacity. A wonderful panel here today to be sharing their NewsMatch experiences, and just going to read them left to right. Megan Wrappe, who is the Development Associate for Futuro Media. Welcome, Megan. Shannon GaNun, who is the Director of Development at The Current. Welcome, Shannon. And Vandana Kumar, who's the President and CEO of India Currents. We're so very happy that the three of you could join us for this wonderful session. Why don't we get started and just kind of kick it off? Alana, next slide, please. So we have designed this presentation, this breakout session, in three key topic areas, and you'll see the slide that will announce the new topics as we're approaching them. We're going to begin with the topic of how do we identify potential community match funders. But again, before I get too fast ahead of myself, I just want to give a brief background of what NewsMatch is for those who are new to the concept of NewsMatch. I did put a link into the chat box that you can explore more at your leisure, but I do just want to read a little bit from this source. And NewsMatch currently is the largest collaborative fundraising campaign to support nonprofit news in the US. It is powered by INN, which is very exciting. And since 2016, the campaign has helped raise over $223 million to jumpstart emerging newsrooms and support independent media outlets that produce fact-based, nonpartisan news and information. That's going to provide some context over what we will be describing today. And as we hear from Megan, Vandana, and Shannon as we're going through their experiences with the NewsMatch campaign. Okay, Alana, next slide, please. Specific to identifying potential funders or donors to your NewsMatch campaign, we've listed out some key steps that are just general best practices as we're moving through how you're preparing your news organization, your newsroom for NewsMatch success. I'll just read through these and then we'll turn it over to the panel to hear their experiences. These are some basic key steps, and we'll just start, as you should always start, is setting your match goal. How much money would you like to raise in matching funds? Very, very direct point to begin. You don't know when you're successful until you know how much exactly you're trying to raise. And then, of course, thinking about who you will be reaching out to, building your list, which donors, which sponsors or supporters can help you reach this goal specifically. Some research, doing some research, as we're all fairly familiar with in this field, which supporters have already supported your cause or similar causes like your newsroom, and how much might they be willing to give. And this could be through their history of giving to your organization or other organizations like yours. And then last but not least is prioritizing your prospects. Which prospects are most likely to support you and with the largest amounts? And how do you start to build a timeline of what donors you're going to be reaching out to and when? So I'm going to keep this slide up as sort of a reminder of the topic we're discussing, but I'd just like to turn over to our panelists. And Megan, I'd like to call on you first to just explain your experience as you're moving through this very first initial phase of the NewsMatch campaign.
Sure. So I have run Futuro Media's NewsMatch campaign since 2018. And last year, we were really looking to do something different. Previous campaigns had a general theme to it, but we wanted it to be more goal-oriented. So we were meeting with one of our board members who was giving us campaign advice, and he suggested focusing our end-of-year campaign on one particular effort. And then another donor reached out to us wanting to start a scholarship fund for young journalists. So our team kind of put two and two together and decided to focus our end of year campaign on our fellows. At Futuro, we have quite a few fellows across our properties who are starting out their careers in journalism. So we focused our campaign on using their testimonials across social media, emails, newsletters, things like that, to solicit donations. And that's something very much needed for our particular fellows because many of them are POC journalists. So finding their way in the journalism world is particularly difficult. So we used this campaign to raise money for them, and it was really successful for us.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I'd like to actually turn it over now to Shannon. Shannon, would you like to share your experiences in prepping your newsroom for the NewsMatch campaign?
Sure. We took a different tact, and we are viewing our NewsMatch campaign as our major fundraiser for the year. We followed the NewsMatch email templates, and it was the first year we have done this. And it really, really, really worked for us. As a general, you've been reading us now for a year. We're only a year and a half old now, so you've been reading us for a year. So how about if you consider contributing to our NewsMatch campaign? And we found that a very successful way to do the fundraising. In fact, it was so successful that we have set up a couple of other campaigns based on the NewsMatch template throughout the year. We have a Report for America Fellow, so we are going to be doing a fundraising campaign using emails. In July, we just hired 5 summer interns, and we used that series of emails as a template to raise money for the interns. And we have found that by sending information out to our readers on a semi-regular basis, we get money trickling in, even if it's not an email specifically related to the campaign. If it's a newsletter during the campaign, people donate because they think, oh, this is the time I'm going to donate. So our tact is using NewsMatch at the end of the year as a annual fundraiser from our readers.
Wonderful, wonderful idea. And thank you for pointing that out, Shannon. In fact, the design of NewsMatch is for the year-end fundraising boost, if you will. So it's good to hear that you're using it that way. Vandana, I'd like to turn over to you now to share some of your experiences with the starting point of the identifying potential community match funders for NewsMatch.
So, Jeffrey, my experience is a little bit different from both Megan's and Shannon's. So, and I also noticed in the chat there were a number of people who are newbies to NewsMatch. And I want to say that I found the NewsMatch templates and the roadmap that they had laid out super, super, super helpful. Now, we ran our first campaign in 2020, and we are absolutely petrified of asking our readers for anything. We had never done that. You know, it's also very intimidating to think like, oh my God, we're going to ask people, what are they going to say? And maybe we're not going to get anything at all. But we should always value the content that we create. And I think when readers are seeing that you have a dedicated readership, people will step up. And that certainly was our experience. You know, although our magazine has been telling stories for 35 years, it's really that 2020 was the first year we actually asked for money. And we were able to raise up to the match in our first campaign. We had no technology. We had no, we didn't know what we were doing. So there are people here I know who would perhaps appreciate hearing that, because we honestly had no idea what to do. So this NewsMatch is actually a huge resource. And if you just follow the roadmap, it'll give you a clue.
Vandana, I'm so happy that you mentioned it from that perspective. In fact, I do want to make mention of the link that I had shared in the chat box does have a brief description of the tools, training, and resources that you described as part of the NewsMatch campaign. All participants will be receiving those same resources as well. And maybe now is a good time to mention, right at the top of the page of the link I just shared, applications for the NewsMatch campaign for INM members is due June 28th. So a couple weeks left to start that process if you haven't done so already. I know I got my application in as soon as it came out. So, all right. Let's move on. Excellent. Okay, so now we got started. Alana, next slide, please. Now we've identified the starting point. We've identified our goal and potentially some donors who can help us reach our goal. It's important to keep in mind too that maybe even at this point, we haven't even reached out to those donors yet. They're on our list to do so. There are some key questions that we need to ask ourselves even before we do begin to reach out to them. And let's go to the next slide, Alana, to take a look at some of those key points, key steps rather. If we don't already, this is a great time to start collecting their interests. What are the interests of our own donors or our prospects, and how do our needs essentially align with their interests? This is really helpful when we're approaching them and inspiring a donation to the NewsMatch campaign by speaking the same language that they resonate with. And this could be something that we've learned from them either through communications, through conversations. Maybe they shared it while they were donating, or maybe even just in general, they've shared it with the CEO or a board member, or some way, shape, or form that comes back to the organization as institutional knowledge that allows us to develop that relationship. So evaluating where their alignment is, where's the greatest alignment between our organization's need and the donor's interests? What can we be willing to offer in return for the matching gift? Now, nothing necessarily that would betray the fundraising process, but offering in the way of stewardship, offering in the way that they value what's important to them, a way that we can value their generosity to supporting the mission of our news organizations. What donors are better suited for different types of stewardship best practices? And then, of course, as I heard all three of you say at some point, is thinking about your proposal. What are you delivering? What is the opportunity, rather, for having them to donate, to give to your newsroom? And what's the benefit? How much would we like them to contribute? By when? And if so, what's the impact of their gift? We can start to think about those things up front as we're packaging that proposal to reach out to them. As is typical, I'd like to also go around the panel to hear from you all about your experiences in this process. And doing so, I'd like to start with you, Shannon. Shannon, can you just share some experiences in the cultivation process of your own donors?
Yes. I would like to say that I am very lucky because our founding journalist, Meg Coker, has a vast network here in Savannah of people, many of whom are on our board. So she was really the key person to get our matching donor this year. And I'm sort of relying on her, quite frankly, to do it again this coming year since I'm so new. But the key is to know who is supporting you, like we've already said, and having that relationship from the get-go. I'm relatively new here, so I'm developing those relationships. So as far as funding goes, I'm relying on the people who founded our organization to help me figure out who are we going to rely on this year? Who can I go to for funding? What's the best way in this community to ask for money? So the relationships that you have with your journalists, with your board members, those are the keys, I think, to securing funding.
What an amazing point you just made, Shannon. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. There's this concept in fundraising, it's actually called a culture of philanthropy, where there are multiple people in our organizations, our newsrooms, while they may not be directly involved with asking for money, they can contribute to the process. And I think that you just illustrated very well that concept. So thank you very much. Alana, can we go to the next slide, please? And then I'd like to turn it over to you, Megan, to talk more about what worked for you as you're thinking about securing those community matches. And here I have up on the screen, the slide rather, one of your own materials. Can you speak to that, please?
Sure. So we originally pulled a list of about 38 donors from our database who had given $500 or more in 2021. And then we also looked at comments that we received from donors that were extra compelling. A lot of our donors will tell us why they want to give to Futuro Media. So we looked at those and we created this list of people that we thought would potentially give to Futuro Media through the matching fund. And we ultimately had 15 individual donors, one foundation, for a total of 16 donors. And these were the messages that we sent out. Each donor got the same exact message, regardless of their relationship with us, whether they were a board member or just a donor. And the message that we sent out, as you can see, it incorporated testimonials from our fellows, how much the money meant to them to be able to continue to be a fellow at Futuro. We've become known as the starting point for a lot of journalists when it comes to their careers. So being a fellow at Futuro Media is incredibly positive for most of them. And we used that to contact these donors, and we had our dollar goal there, which showed that we were working towards a $25,000 goal. And we succeeded that. The messages we sent out were compelling enough that people paid attention. And we were so incredibly lucky, like Shannon, we had 100% participation from our board when it came to giving.
Well done. What a great share. Thank you. So many people do look to board members as leaders of the organization. In fact, some of them might even, some of the more savvy donors might say, how many of your board members have given to this campaign so far? And just being prepared to respond to that question, I think is a good best practice. So Megan, thank you so much for saying that. Alana, next slide, please. I'd like to turn it over to Vandana, who can speak more to what she did, what worked when she was securing community matches. And again, as Megan had the last slide, Vandana, we have one of your materials up on the screen as well. Can you please speak to your experience in this area?
Yeah. As I said, Jeffrey, the first time we ran a donation campaign was in 2020. And we had no community matches. And largely because we had very limited capacity, we didn't know what the heck we were doing. So, but in 2021, we were much better prepared. And so we did have collateral. One of the things that we did is we looked at the list of donors in 2020 and identified the folks that had given over $500. These were average readers, some of whom I knew, many of whom I had no idea who they were, but they were just loyal readers and they wanted to support the magazine. And so we decided a combination of capacity and expertise, call it what you will, that we didn't send any mass emailers for securing these matches, and we decided to become really personal. So reaching out to each person individually, like I made phone calls. I had a small list to begin with people, so it was not an onerous job, but it gave me an opportunity to understand why somebody was supporting. And it has helped me articulate that for the rest of the folks that I reached out to. And so we created this. This was also a template that NewsMatch had given us access to, and we just personalized it. And I spoke with everybody, and every person I spoke with agreed to give to be a community match. And that was actually phenomenal because I knew I was going to meet, the cap that NewsMatch had offered. And I was looking for other ways in which we could increase the amount. And community matches was one of the ways that we could do it. And so I think this for us is a growing opportunity because now this year I have a bigger list. And we didn't even ask for a specific program. We pretty much used the NewsMatch language. All we did is really personalize with people information about India Current, so our readers could relate to that. And we were able to, in fact, in 2021, 31% of our revenue came through community matches. So I think that was pretty successful.
Outstanding. I think the three of you just identified some unique but similar strategies in that we had Shannon, who was very much relying on the founders and others within the organization that might have had those relationships established to help build stronger relationships with the funding base. Megan, we had board members also who were involved, but also customizing that communication very much, and also being very clear about your goal that let people know, here's what we're trying to do. Here's the amount, here's the impact, and you can really support us. And then Vandana, who just basically said, I'm just going to start calling people and talking to them directly and not relying on mass communications. Very different strategy, but very effective, extremely effective. In fact, in my own fundraising experience, if you can reach out to somebody directly who you know, the likelihood of you receiving and securing that gift just goes a lot higher. And so that's exciting to hear. So many different strategies that we've just exhibited now and illustrated that we can start to incorporate into securing those gifts. All right, this is the third topic of 3 of this presentation. It's really about incorporating those community matches into NewsMatch, or if you think about it, into the larger campaign. All right, Alana, next slide, please. The 2 key steps that we can begin as far as leveraging community matches. It's a little bit wordy, but I'll just go through this. The first one is think about, and I thought I might have heard, Vandana, you mentioning this a little bit yourself, is think about the overall match cap and how can you start to increase that? How can you start to utilize strategies to increase that matching gift portion of your campaign? And I'll just read it right here. NewsMatch will only match up to a certain amount of donations you receive during the campaign period. And that does change, so keep an eye out for the INN folks to let you know what that cap is for this year. However, you can secure additional community match funds to increase your organization's overall match cap and inspire more supporters to give. Those are different strategies that you can start to think about, and you know your community of supporters better than anybody. And as you start to build those strategies, you can start to see those matches increase as well. Second bullet point is think about how you can start to triple, even quadruple donations for the period of time. And speaking of period of time, as we're thinking about the year-end campaign, is if this is a newer concept to some of the callers on this breakout session, think about between roughly October, November, December, roughly that period, or November, December is really the kind of the heavy communication part of a year-end campaign. However, that doesn't mean that you need to wait until November to start planning these types of strategies and your year-end campaign. In fact, a lot of folks are starting now, hence the NewsMatch application due June 28th. So you can start to stack up your matching gifts on top of one another and boost your campaign by tripling donations for a period of time. So as an example, a $20 matching gift could be $40 or $60 if you were to start to stack them up as is suggested on this slide. Now, as is typical as we're moving through this breakout, I'd love to hear from the panelists and their experience. Even if you've already started to share some of these strategies, I'd love to hear like some big wins or maybe even a donor testimonial. Maybe you don't have to mention their names specifically, but just love to hear what your donors' experience as they're moving through this is. But before we get to that point, Alana, next slide, please. So Megan, we're back to you. We have another well, it says testimonial, but I don't want to give away the secret. Another material from yours, as you're working on your community matches, how you're making it personal and how you're tying in the community and your supporters into the overall mission of your organization.
So the graphic that you see, we put on pretty much every communication we sent out. This was across our social media posts, in our newsletters, in the emails that we sent donors. And those are our donors who were part of our matching fund. We were so grateful to them that we continued to name them throughout the campaign. And when we do run a campaign, we let our donors know how thankful they are. So we go above and beyond to put lists together of people who donated and posted on social media, whether that be Instagram posts, Twitter, or Instagram stories. We want their names to be there. So we take those names and put them on social media. We created a website honor roll of all the donors that we had in 2021, and it's clickable. People can see it. And then we also do mailings. We are so thankful to our development director, Stacy, who's also here. She sends personalized thank you notes to all of our donors. And I don't know how she finds the time to do it, but she does. And she's gotten thank you notes from people back and messages saying, nice. Thank you for an actual handwritten note. So we incorporate our community matches whenever possible. We love using the testimonials from our donors telling us why they listen to us all the time.
That's wonderful, Megan. That's so incredible, and it's inspiring for other donors as they're maybe paying attention to the cadence of communication as they're being solicited or communicated with during a campaign, to see other supporters, other testimonies. I've given, and here's why. That could be the tipping point for any donor to move into that. Okay, I'm ready. Hit the donate button, or even reach out to you for more information, which could be just as valuable for your position and for the organization. Alana, next slide, please. And then for this one, I'm actually going to turn it over to, it's both Shannon and Vandana, but I'd like to start with you, Shannon, just kind of because you're on the left side of this this slide here. Share some of your experiences and how you're incorporating the community matches into your organizations, your newsrooms, NewsMatch campaign.
We took the resources that NewsMatch provided and personalized them. As you can see on the screen, we've got the NewsMatch and the current logo, and we use it on Facebook. We put it in the emails we sent to our newsletter readers, and we tried to use it pretty much everywhere during those 2 months to remind people to donate to us. It was in our footers of all of the emails that we sent out. Now's the time to donate, to double your impact. So the resources that NewsMatch provides are very valuable. It takes a little bit of time to plan. So I do recommend, as Jeffrey said, to start planning now. And as soon as you get that packet from NewsMatch, personalize the emails as much as you can and get them ready to go. Work on the graphics, get those ready to go, so that when November hits, you are ready to just bang it out and have it with everything that you send out.
Excellent advice, Shannon. Thank you. Vandana, would you like to explain some of your experiences in how you incorporated the community matches into your NewsMatch campaign?
Yeah, we also did what Shannon has done, incorporating the NewsMatch logos into all our social media outreach, into our newsletters. Every newsletter that went out from November through December had some version of this ask. You've shared one here, Jeffrey. This is an example of the personalization that we did. Since I've been a figure that the India Currents readers are very familiar with, I thought, putting a picture along with the ask, and that language actually is from the NewsMatch, just slightly modified for our readers, was something that actually worked, because people in the community know me. I've been the one constant, as I said, for 35 years. So that brought in actually a lot of comments as well as donations. And I have found that every time I have done that along with a picture, it has really helped.
Yeah.
Versus just the text. Similarly, on social media, we actually created various versions where we put in the pictures of our team, the people that were actually, so you create like a human face of the organization. It isn't just, like India Currents, that is a corporation that's doing things. It is a nonprofit that's very much embedded in the community. And these are real people, the faces behind the work that our readers have been seeing. And we found that to be effective for us.
Very much so. Thank you, Vandana. That's a great point. It personalizes more when somebody can see a face. It starts to ignite or evoke, rather, an emotion that it's connecting a community, that people are defined, or our community is defined by its people. Hence, if we're donating and giving and supporting a community, then it's more of a direct tie to that community itself if we can see the people involved. So excellent point. Fantastic. We are just cruising. We are already toward the Q&A portion. In fact, Alana, if you want to go to the next slide, that would be just kind of a kickoff to the question portion. I do have open the Q&A and polls tab where I have 3 questions, and I'd love to just read them and then just put them in front of the panel, and you all can either jump in or take turns, however you want to approach it. And I'll just start here. This is Allison Westerman. who has a question. Actually, it's a direct question. Any advice for working with another team member? And then she clarifies by saying that she's a membership and events, and she's also a major gifts person at our organization, to develop a strategy for approaching donors for NewsMatch. Any advice of working with team members?
Well, I would think that you'd want to work with as many team members as you possibly can, right? You'd have to determine who they know. So part of it is just having a relationship with the people you work with and talking to them and figuring out who they know in the community, what they know, the different people that they know that you can then hook up with. And the way I'm looking at it is some meetings our editor-in-chief is going to go with me. Some I'm going to go on my own. Some our managing editor is going to go with me. Some I'm going to go on my own. Some they're going to do on their own and report back to me. It's just a matter of working together and figuring out the best way to approach those donors based on personal relationships.
And Jeffrey, I'd like to add to that. So this really is a measure of how big your organization is. In smaller organizations like ours, every single person is involved. I make that very, very clear to our team that everyone's going to be involved in NewsMatch. And to a certain measure, to what Shannon said, there are people that I'm going out and meeting, but people can be involved in a variety of ways, right? You know, they can be involved in managing the look and feel of the newsletter. Somebody is involved in creating the collateral. Somebody is, brainstorming. So everyone feels a sense of ownership. And then we celebrate every victory. Every donation that comes in is like, whoa, it's our small team, but look at us, Also, we also emphasize that every team member in the organization has to be a part of NewsMatch, and they can donate according to their own capacity. It can be $5, it can be $50, it can be $500, whatever it is, but it has to be 100%. And I think it creates a vesting that we were not able to create in our first year. But I saw a marked difference when we did that in our second year. And I said, I'm a relative newbie and we are a small organization. So the way in which we would function versus a large organization, I'm sure, are vastly different.
Yes, and Vandana, in fact, you've actually helped answer one of the questions that Alex had, is what advice for tiny newsrooms or solopreneurs do you have? Working through all of this seems daunting, or it can seem daunting. And it sounds like just understanding that understanding your own capacity initially, and then building a strategy that centers around that strategy, but also realizing, as I've heard from the three of you uniquely, that relying on the tools and resources that NewsMatch has provided can help expedite a lot of that process as well. In fact, that's what it's designed to do, is help smaller newsrooms make it more of a manageable process. So I hope that helps.
Actually, I would like, I wanted to tell Alex that it is totally doable. Now, you cannot do everything, so accept that. But even as a very tiny newsroom, as a solopreneur, you can do it. And I'm happy to talk to you separately to Alex, because it may not be relevant for all. But there are things that you can do even if there's just one person in the organization.
I'd like to second that. That's Megan, go ahead, and then I'll have something to say.
No, I agree with both of you. When I took over NewsMatch in 2018, we had never done it before, and I was working completely on my own. My teammates were inundated with other things, and so it was kind of me figuring out what worked for us. But since then, we've now gotten to the point where each one of my team members takes ownership of certain things throughout the campaign. So, for example, I took ownership of social media and emails. Someone else took ownership of direct mailing. Someone else took ownership of redesigning the website so our donation forms spoke to the campaign. So you have to make sure that people aren't over capacity with the campaign, and we start planning in July. So things are organized as much as they can be, but there are always some things that come up last minute. And you just have to make sure that everybody's communicating as well.
Mm-hmm.
Very important point, Megan. You mentioned start early.
Yes.
And we do too. You know, it's that same thing. And you build that momentum within the organization. Even if it's 3 people, you know, if you have more, of course, you know, there's a lot that you can do.
I have 2 points to add. The information you get from NewsMatch is going to be several emails, maybe like 9 or 10, if I recall correctly. And at first I thought it was excessive, but then I realized you really have to use as many as they recommend. The one thing they didn't have this year that I highly recommend is a email telling your readers to save their money for, if they're thinking about donating for, what is that, Giving Tuesday after Thanksgiving, keep us in mind. And we had a huge spike on that Tuesday because I sent it out the Friday before. I think it was the day after Thanksgiving, saying, hey, I know you're going to be shopping next Tuesday for giving. Keep us in mind. And then Giving Tuesday, I sent an email first thing, and we got a lot of money that day. So I highly recommend doing that. The other thing I highly recommend, if you use MailChimp, download the app. There is a magic button on the app where it will tell you about 24 hours after you do your first send. It'll tell you how many people did not open your email. You press one button and hold it, and it automatically resends to those who did not open your email. And we got hundreds of dollars every single time we did that second send. Highly, highly recommend those 2 things.
An inside tip. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. I didn't discover it until after this NewsMatch campaign. I discovered it when we did our intern fundraising, and now I'm kind of ticked off that I didn't know about it during NewsMatch, because I think we would have gotten even more. One third thing I'd like to say is that you have to reframe your mindset as a world of abundance, and you are giving people the opportunity to support democracy and freedom and news that this world and this country needs right now. Who else is going to do it if not you? It's so important to our country and to our society, and it is really a way to have people put their money where their mouth is and to make them vote for nonpartisan, for us anyway, nonpartisan news that is quality journalism.
Very well said, Shannon, all around. And in fact, there is a question from Walter that I would like to throw, because it does tie into what you just mentioned about the number of emails that NewsMatch had recommended that is rolled out over the 2-month period. Walter does ask that same question. What is the best number of contacts during the 2-month matching period? And then he clarifies, how many emails should you send out? And what he's wondering also is, what's the cadence of those contacts or emails? I mean, is it spread out? Is it bunched together? Or what's your
Listen
experience?
to NewsMatch. Look at what they send. Just follow the template. I'm telling you, man, they know what they're doing.
There it is. Perfect. I'd like to go to a question from Christine Schmidt. I think this is a great one, actually, because it is a good question that we all are probably thinking, and where we're thinking about our own campaign, our own internal capacities, and how we're navigating that. Christine asks, what is the most challenging aspect of building out the community matches, or what did you learn most about the process? I think this is a great one to just kind of round robin it. Megan, would you like to start?
Sure.
Okay.
So last year was actually the first time that we had capacity on our team to email our donors in our database. Before that, we were just using MailChimp to send donation emails. And the response that we've gotten from that is amazing. We had donors who hadn't given since 2015 give again. We've had so many responses from people that are excited about contributing to us, contributing to the fellows and things like that. And it's a testament to making sure that you have the capacity to do it. But when you are such a small team, we're 3 people. You really have to make sure you are putting your effort towards communication, finding those new relationships that haven't been cultivated in a while. And for people who you feel like you've ignored, ask them anyway. We learned that people who didn't have a gift in a couple years, we asked once and they gave again. Even if you feel uncomfortable doing it, it's totally worth it.
Ooh, another thing to remember is once someone gives, you need to take them off your email list. And then there's a way to send you have to tag your audience. And I can't remember how I did it, but you take them off your list so you don't send them again, because you don't want to insult someone by saying give again. So every time someone gave, we took them off the list. There's a way you can tag them in MailChimp and then not include that segment the next time you send the email. So just do some research on there and you'll figure out how to do it.
Well, I learned something right now, Shannon, because one of the things that we are struggling with is technology. First of all, we didn't have a platform of how to collect money. Yeah, I mean, that was very basic. But anyway, we did find something that we were able to incorporate, but it's still pretty basic. So we are not able to sort in that who donated and how do we take them off the list, because it was, we just continued to send everybody, and I'm sure they were ticked off. But surprisingly, some people who had donated already saw an email that we had sent later into the campaign saying that we are only $3,000 short of our goal. Can you help us meet? And although he had already donated, he just wrote, he said, let me know on the 30th how much you're short, and I'll meet that.
Wow.
And I was, first of all, I was shocked. First of all, because this guy had already donated. I didn't even know who he was, but he wanted to step up. And towards the end, at that point, I was almost tempted to just say, well, we are $3,000 short. But I just had to wait.
Hand it over.
I was only like 975 short.
Wow.
And I told him, and he made the payment like right away. So yes, while there is merit in removing some, but what I realized is the people who are donating are also kind of vested in you. And certainly in our readership, we did notice that the kind of content we are creating, nobody else is. So there is, they're reading all the emails. And when he saw that, so I mean, although that's not something NewsMatch recommends, they do say that remove the names from the list. Since we didn't have a way to do it, or we didn't know a way to do it, we just continue to send. But
thank you for sharing. Vandana, there's a question actually for you from Danny. He's curious about the size of your team specifically.
Oh, well, we have three now. We have 3 full-time people. Now, when we ran our campaign the first year, we had no full-time. I mean, I was a full-time person, and the second year, we had maybe 2 people, 2 full-time FTEs, full-time equivalent, and a number of part-time folks that, help with either building, creating collateral, creating images, running the newsletter. They all, I sort of divided it up because I had very little resources, while I was the one person that was, as I said, leading. So I kept track of everything. But I just gave it out in little bits so that work could be done. And so, yeah, we're a small team, but this year I feel like we've grown so much. 3 full-time people.
We are approaching we just have a few more minutes, and I just want to read one more question from Meg Waters, actually. That was answered by Momita. Meg asks, and it's in the chat box for those who want to read the response. There's a link to more resources. That's why I'd like to read this real quickly. Meg asks, do you collect the matching gift before NewsMatch or after? Momita answered, we require proof of donation and reporting after the campaign is ended and prior to match disbursement. And then you can read more, and then there's a link in the chat box. Before we wrap this up, we just have a few more minutes. I'm just thinking of the folks on the breakout session on the receiving end of all this wonderful information, and thinking if this is their first time going through it. The three of you are experts by now, right, of the entire NewsMatch campaign. I'm just curious, in a couple sentences, what advice would you give to those folks who are just starting their very first year with the NewsMatch campaign? And again, I'm going to start it with you, Megan, and a couple sentences. What words of wisdom would you give to this group right here?
My first piece of advice was to start early, figure out your goal if you have one, figure out the theme of your campaign if that's what you would like to do, and start planning. I remember the second and third year of NewsMatch, I was putting together our social media calendar the end of July, early August, and it was approved probably mid-October. And that just saves you time when you are in the craziness of NewsMatch. Scheduling things as much as you can is always welcome. It saves everybody time, and organization is key, making sure that everything goes out smoothly. And really focus on your language. We say all the time, pull at people's heartstrings. So find the language in there that will help people want to donate to you.
Excellent advice. Shannon, I'll kick it over to you. Words of wisdom, advice for the newcomers in the group.
Great. Well, the first thing that you really need to do is have quality journalism. So take a step back and make sure that what you're putting out there is worthwhile to support. And at the current ga.org, I can honestly say that we have the best journalism, bar none, in the entire country. So I have an easy job, quite frankly. All my job is telling the stories of the people telling the stories. And with an abundance mindset, I think it's going to be an easy home run again for NewsMatch this year. So focus on your quality journalism is the first piece of advice. And second piece of advice is follow what NewsMatch tells you to do. It really is helpful.
Fantastic. Thank you, Shannon. Vandana, please, words of wisdom for the newcomers in the group.
Well, I think following both Megan and Shannon, you sort of mentioned some of the points I would have mentioned, but here goes. I think planning is key, and use as much technology help as possible, because even it really helps build capacity, and you're not going to be stressed out at that end. Well, you're going to be stressed out. There's really no getting away from that. But if you've done the planning, and that means using the NewsMatch resources, just, I think we'll get them around August or September, I think around that time frame. And personalize your stuff right then, go through it, and schedule it. Use whatever tool you might use for scheduling all your outreach. And the other thing is, don't be shy. You've got to ask people. You don't be afraid of picking up the phone and calling somebody. What's the worst somebody's going to do or say? They're going to say no, big deal. The first time somebody says no, it kind of hurts, but after that, that's the job. You're asking for it, And so that really was a hurdle for me, because I realized I had to realize that it wasn't personal. It's not like, oh, they don't really like me, or they don't. It isn't that. You're trying to raise money, and that's your job. You have to call, you have to email, you have to be persistent, and people have busy lives. It's okay if they don't respond the first time. It's okay. Let's not just reach out again, try again. And I feel like with that attitude, you will find success.
Words of wisdom from everyone. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Vandana. There's one last note from Momita. Please reach out to the NewsMatch team if there's any questions throughout this process. They're happy to find answers. And with that, we are at time. I want to thank the amazing panelists and for you all for attending and listening and participating in this great breakout session. Please enjoy the rest of the INN Days 2022 conference. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, y'all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.